Churchill Shadow, Chapter 7. Stella, Jeopardies and Refugees. 11th of May, a secret location near Strasbourg, France. At the French-German border outside Strasbourg, Stella's little bus, with its new black and orange cloth seats, waited in the shadow of the mountains which were silhouetted against the purple sky. She sat on the step and breathed in the spicy fragrance of the cedar trees swaying in the fresh mountain breeze. She stood and examined her reflection in the wing mirror of the bus and almost did not recognise the woman who looked back. She was wearing black cotton trousers, a loose white shirt, and her hair had been cut short in a French-style bob. In the destination panel above the windscreen, Stella had rolled the sign round to read "Pas en service," an ironic message as today the bus would be doing a great service for a group of discarded and desperate people. As the children emerged from the gloom of the forest, Stella ran over to greet them. She took the first little boy by the hand and led him to the bus, and the others followed. She lifted the raggedy little bodies one by one to a tall, thin man called Luke. A small, dark-eyed boy wrapped his arms around her neck. His short trousers were torn at the pocket, and he wore odd shoes. His older brother stepped up onto the bus on his own, his glasses broken on one side and held together with a sticking plaster. Two thin, dark-haired girls came next, Erica, 19, and Charlotte, 16. Their coats revealed a dark mark and stitch holes where a yellow Star of David had been sewn on the breast pocket. Their parents, Jacob and Regina, followed, wearing felt hats and wool coats with the telltale stitch marks of the star and carrying a small leather suitcase, all their worldly possessions. Regina thanked them. "Danke, danke. Sie sind so freundlich. Uns zu helfen." Her left hand revealed a white mark on her third finger where she had worn a wedding ring for 21 years. Many of the weary travellers were too tired to speak. They just smiled, lowering their eyes as they climbed aboard. They all wore shabby clothes and had dirty, worn-out shoes. One small boy with big green eyes took Luke's hand as he climbed the step. "Herbert Glass," he announced with a smile. Others following thought they should give their names. Evelyn Aber, a small dark-haired woman with a tatty headscarf. Renate Aber, 15, with thick dark curls, wearing a man's coat. Gisela Levy, a stick-thin woman with scruffy grey hair. Lottie Levy, wearing a frayed school uniform with the Star of David sewn on the chest. Paul Levy, limping in a pair of oversized army boots with no laces. They each whispered words of thanks as they came aboard. They were followed by a group of children from an orphanage. Bertha, Alfred, Emma, Rosie, Edith, Helene, Eva, Alice, Leo, Willie, Julie, Bella, and Miriam. The light was fading and Martin had already left half an hour earlier with a full coach heading for the Swiss border. Other coaches shut their doors and started their engine. Pierre fiddled with his rosary. "What's the hold-up? Where are the rest? We need to get to Boulogne. We can't be late. The Spanish boats won't wait." "Just give them a little longer." Stella looked down the aisle. The bus was not yet full. 20 children, 8 women and 5 men were slumped on the seats. She looked towards the woods. Nothing moved in the gloom. Pierre shoved the rosary in his pockets. "Have you heard the news? The Germans have broken through into Holland and Belgium. We think they're about to cross into France. This will be our last run. God help any Jews left in Germany. The Nazis have made laws to make their lives impossible. They fired any Jew holding a government job. Then Jewish lawyers were not allowed to practice, and those with businesses were made to sell them to Germans at below the market price. They expelled all Jewish children from schools and universities and in February Jews were told to surrender all gold, silver and diamonds without compensation. It's not just the Nazis. Hundreds of petty officials in local authorities all over Germany have made up their own harsh local laws to make life unbearable for anyone with a drop of Jewish blood. A squat man with a beret, dark clothing and a rifle tied with string appeared from the woods, holding a child's hand. A band of 9 bedraggled refugees followed him. "Oh, here are the rest, thank God, let's get going." Pierre lifted the small girl up the steps. "Wie ist dein Name, Kleines?" "What is your name, little one?" "Betty Blum." Edith Stein, a middle-aged woman, flabby cheeks, round and rosy. Rudolf Stein, her husband, wearing broken spectacles and a resigned look on his face. Ruth and Wilfried Muller, a middle-aged couple wearing matted fur coats and all the jewellery they owned. Ludwig and Estelle Wiseman. He helped her up the steps as she was in the latter stage of pregnancy. "Thank you. These are our twins, Rachel and Esther." "We are 6 today," said the 2 bright-eyed girls with tight dark curls and Cupid's bow lips. "Then we shall sing Joyeux anniversaire to you as we drive along." Stella gave both girls a hug. "Happy birthday." Luke passed each passenger a baguette with a slab of pork and pointed to the churn filled with fresh water and the metal mug in the back of the coach. He winked at one man who looked orthodox with dark curls hanging from under his black hat. "Chicken sandwich, sir?" The man smiled. "Thank you. We Jews haven't been allowed to slaughter our own animals since 1933, but I thank you for your thoughtfulness and respect. I will enjoy this chicken sandwich." Stella squinted as she forced herself to concentrate on the dimly lit road. After about an hour, she caught up with the end of the line of coaches heading towards the coast. It was dry and clear, but progress was slow since they used the back roads and the headlights had to be shrouded to keep their presence hidden. Several of the younger children on Stella's bus were crying. She longed to stop and tend to them. She turned to Luke. "God knows how many miles these children have walked to escape the Nazis. They smell terrible. They can't have been able to wash properly for weeks. I wish I'd bought them some soap and towels. What am I thinking? They're so exhausted." She glanced in her rear view mirror and noticed most of her passengers had fallen asleep. The journey took them through a series of tiny hamlets with stone houses and steep pitched slate roofs. Stella yawned and rubbed her eyes with her fists. 12th of May, Boulogne. The sea was black against the grey night, showing the first yellow tinge of the anticipated dawn. Stella's bus was third in the queue. She watched Pierre, still dressed as a priest in his flowing robes, gesticulating to the guards at the entrance to the port. "I think he really likes that outfit," Luc Moreau joined Stella at the front of the bus. "What do you mean?" Stella assessed the tall, wiry young man seated opposite, cleaning his long rifle. "Pierre, he likes dressing up in that priest garb." There was a glint of humour in his grey eyes. "Is he very religious?" "No, not at all. It's just that, well, he doesn't like, women." "I wouldn't say that." "Oh, he likes women. He especially likes you. I'll just forget it." "Oh, do you mean he's homosexual?" "Oh, well, there you are. You said it, not me." "And you?" Stella had a hint of a smile on her lips. "Mon Dieu, certainly not. I love to be with women, whenever and wherever I can." "So what are you doing helping with these refugees? You don't look like a Jew." "I'm not. I'm a friend of Pierre's. I was a farrier before the war. No horses to shoe, so here I am, helping my best friend." Stella could see Pierre's back. At first his stance was easy, as he held his arms open with his palms facing upwards towards the heavens. As the discussions wore on, Stella could read things were getting tricky. The guards looked hostile, and Pierre began to raise his arms in the air. Betty Blum tugged Stella's sleeves. "Can I please go to the toilet?" Well, I don't know where we might find one. Let me take you off the bus behind the wall and you can squat there. Come on, little one. Stella jumped down from the bus and lifted the child off the top step. She was light as a croissant. When did you last eat? I'm not sure. I think it was Thursday. Oh, today's Sunday. How old are you? I'm 12. Her face was small and dirty, and the lack of food had drawn her cheeks in, so she looked much younger. You poor soul, I thought you were about 8. My sister was 8. The little girl sobbed, but was dehydrated, and no tears ran down her grime-stained cheeks. Was 8? Yes, we had to leave her behind with the angels. The girl clutched her hands to her chest in an imaginary hug. Oh, my poor sweet child, what horrible things you've endured. The little girl went to relieve herself behind the wall. She experienced a sensation of needing to go, but she could not. When she returned, Stella bent down and hugged her. They walked to the bus in silence. There were raised voices in the distance, but Stella was unable to make out what was being said. Pierre had arranged for the passengers to board small boats, which would take them around the coast to Spain. It was taking so long and the refugees were growing restless, but first this little girl needed some water. Stella fed it to her in small sips from a spoon and checked all her passengers had drunk and had some water and eaten their sandwiches. Stella got back to the driver's seat and yawned. Her eyes became heavy and her head dropped forward as she succumbed to sleep. She fell forward on the steering column, sounding the horn. She sat up in shock after a few seconds. Oh no, what have I done? The 2 men at the gate strode towards her bus, leaving Pierre alone in the road, waving his arms around. The tall French officer poked his head through the driver's window. So, you're in a hurry with your unlawful cargo. Oh, look who the priest has recruited to his secret army. A woman. And isn't she quite lovely? Stella smiled. Oh, I'm so sorry, officer, about sounding the horn. It was an accident. Oh, you think we're taking too long to let you through, eh? Oh, I wouldn't dream of criticising. I expect you've a lot of very important paperwork to attend to. Indeed. You see, it's just that they're so exhausted, all of them. The officers looked at each other. Stella gave them an appealing smile. The taller of the 2 men scratched his head while the tubby one waited for the other's lead. Stella gripped the steering wheel to stop her hands shaking. Oh, how could we refuse the lovely lady with such polite requests? Our business with the priest is done. We will raise the barrier for you, mademoiselle, and we shall look forward to meeting you again on your return journey. The officers joked and quarrelled about which one of them would be her boyfriend as they returned to their guard's hut. They waved Pierre back to his coach, reappeared and opened the barrier. All 8 coaches started up their engines. Stella smiled and waved at the officers as her little bus passed their hut. They blew her kisses in return. She drove past 2 French 75mm guns aimed at the English Channel and 2 motorised 25mm anti-tank guns. One had broken down and French army engineers were trying to repair it. The coaches crawled onto the dock and parked alongside the tall black cranes. The aroma of hot vegetable soup and the yeasty fragrance of warm bread drifted around the bus and revived the passengers. It was set up on rough trestle tables prepared by local supporters. Stella looked at Pierre and raised an eyebrow. Do we still need to call you Father Pierre while we're here? Of course, my child. I'm looking forward to hearing your full confession later. The passengers were tired and queued in silence for a little soup. They sat on boxes on the quay, awaiting the dawn and the high tide. At 700 hours, officials arrived to check the papers Pierre had acquired for them, and the verboten people passed through the customs post. Stella felt drained of energy. She sat down with Betty and cuddled her as she slept. After an hour or so, the boats were almost boarded. Hey, what about this little one? Stella rocked Betty on her lap and the child stretched and sat up. Pierre consulted his clipboard. Oh, she has no money or papers. She could come with us, Regina Goschalk called from the deck of the first boat. We used to know her parents, and she could use the papers of our youngest daughter. She brushed a tear from her face. We lost her to an illness on the way, appendicitis, but we have no money left. Oh, my lord, how much is it? The cost is 200 francs for children. Pierre did not need to consult his paperwork for that information. Wait, I'll get the money. Stella counted the money in her purse. I have 160 francs. Turn out your pockets, Pierre. Pierre reached deep into his robe and examined a few coins before handing them over. Stella counted the money. 9 francs? Is that it? She gazed up at the passengers and crew on the deck of the boat and waved at the men working on the dockside. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "This little girl is 12 years old. She has no money. I need 31 francs so she can go on the boat with the others. Those who can spare it, please throw me a sou." There was silence. Stella lowered her head. Without warning, she was showered with coins. Thank you, everyone. She waved at the sailors and the dock workers on the quayside who had thrown her the coins. Oh, it's too much. I've got too much money. Pierre picked up a few stray coins. Save it for another deserving case, or you can give me my 9 francs back. Stella gave him a sideways look. The refugees stood on the deck of the first boat with their few possessions and waved farewell to Pierre and his helpers. Stella picked out Betty standing next to the rail and blew her a kiss. The child pretended to catch it and hold it against her heart. Regina held Betty's hand and called out to Stella, "Don't worry, Jacob and I will see that she is loved and looked after." Stella sent them off with a wave. She watched the 3 fishing boats head west. The glass of the wheelhouses reflected the rising sun as the boats took the refugees to safer waters. She returned to the bus and slumped on the driver's seat, closed her eyes and let the weak sun fall on her cheeks while she uttered a short prayer for the safe arrival in Spain of her precious cargo. 4th of May, Thompson's Grocers, Norwood. The Belgian armed forces, on the order of their king, surrendered to the Germans today in the early hours of the morning, announced the BBC newsreader over the radio in the parlour. By this action, they have created a gap in the front, through which German armoured divisions are pouring in to threaten Anglo-French troops. Kate and Bernie sat together on the sofa in the small back room where they had been waiting for the news announcement. Katie gripped Bernie's hands. "Oh no, please God, let our army hold them back." "Is there news of Stella?" Bernie rubbed his hand. "Not a word. Your uncle's been back and forth to France with Churchill several times now, but he's not seen her. Oh, Bernie, I'm so frightened. I can't imagine what must be happening in France. Just think of it, Germans invading. Your uncle will have a devil of a job locating her and Martin. If only he'd found her in Metz. He's very upset. He thinks he let her down." Bernie looked at the floor. Kate stroked his head. "It's just that when she spoke to me, she sounded so jolly, not at all as if she was in any danger. I know it's my fault too. My letter to your uncle contained all my news, and I never would have included something like that if I thought poor Stella was in any trouble." Kate stood up and opened the ironing table with a thwack and plugged in her electric iron. Bernie handed her a pile of Walter's shirts. Across the channel, Stella was celebrating. The resistance was opening bottles of wine in the farmhouse belonging to Pierre's aunt. Stella was enjoying a shot of adrenaline. She was determined to carry on with her secret work and was oblivious to the dangers that lay ahead. 4th of June, Thompson's Grocers in Norwood. A month passed with no news of Stella and Martin. Instead, Kate received a cryptic message in her weekly letter from Walter to listen to today's news announcement and let him know if she noticed anything unusual. He need not have asked. Kate and Bernie had established a routine of sitting together by the radio each day to listen to the 6 o'clock news. With food rationing in full flow, the shop had become very busy with customers looking for supplies off ration. As soon as she could, Kate rushed from the shop to the small parlour, unfastening her apron as she walked. She turned up the volume on the radio to hear the last lines of the dreary organ music broadcast by the BBC. Bernie poured tea from a blue ceramic teapot into china cups and handed one to Kate. She sat down on the sofa. Bernie sat next to her. "What's all this about?" Kate blew on her tea. "Your uncle can be so mysterious sometimes. Oh, it's starting." At the BBC radio studio in London, Norman Shelley leaned into the microphone and began to speak slowly, doing his best to mimic Churchill's distinctive voice. He ended the speech with the famous words, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." All over the country, people gathered around radio sets in their living rooms. They were anxious to hear the voice of their Prime Minister, and as far as they knew, the voice they heard was Churchill's. Norman fooled everyone, and Walter was delighted because the trick could be used to make the enemy think Churchill was in London when he could be elsewhere. In the back of the room, Kate put her arm round Bernie. "Well, did you notice anything I should report to your uncle?" She had no idea that the broadcast was not from Churchill. "That bloke hates whistling. I don't know really. It was a good speech, but we need to, Uncle, to get Mr. Churchill to end this war before May 1941. May 1941? Yes, I'll be 18 and expected to fight. Oh, my love, no, that's not happening.